In just under 3 hours from now, Nevada Republicans will begin the process of deciding who they want to be their party's nominee. The GOP caucuses start at 8 p.m. Eastern. 30 delegates are at stake. The polls have Trump on the cusp of a third straight win. Last night, he sat down for an hour with Sean Hannity and addressed concerns among some on the right that he's not conservative enough to be the Republican nominee.
Ronald Reagan was a liberal, pretty liberal Democrat, and he evolved into a fairly conservative. He wasn't the most conservative person, but he evolved into a Republican who was fairly conservative. I will say this, I think that I have very much evolved, but if you look at my real conservative credentials, and I don't think the word's that important, you know, they say he is not a true conservative. I know Jeb and others were saying, he is not a true conservative. And it's like, what is this? Because, you know, and that's when I came up, and about 2 weeks ago I said, I'm a common sense conservative.
Rubio and Cruz are determined to break Trump's winning streak tonight. Here's Rubio.
If we nominate someone that half of the Republican Party hates, we're going to be fighting against each other all the way to November. We will never win that way. We can't, I don't care how much you may think they're funny or how interesting they may sound. If we nominate someone that 40 to 50% of our party can't stand, we are going to lose.
So politics, especially presidential politics at this stage of the game and the race, are about two things, momentum and time. Trump has the momentum, and time is running out for Cruz and Rubio, and here's why. The magic number to clinch is 1,237. Here's where the candidates stand so far. You can see it on the screen right now. But here's how the delegate count breaks down going forward. Super Tuesday awards 621 delegates. The following week, another 356 delegates. And then the big date, March 15th, winner-take-all states mostly, and also Florida and Ohio, winner-take-all states. 367 more delegates that day for a grand total of 1,344 delegates. It's bitter medicine, but if Cruz and or Rubio want to make a serious run at president, one has to drop out before Super Tuesday, or the path is paved for the frontrunner who leads most of the polls of the upcoming states. Now, that part is my opinion right there, KG. If they continue to be a three-man race, the ones that aren't Donald Trump are going to be splitting a vote, and they're splitting it pretty evenly. Would it make sense for one of them to step aside now?
That's not going to happen, especially with those three. You've got, you know, 5 people still in it. I mean, Carson and Kasich are still in it. They're not showing any signs of dropping out. They want to be in it for the long haul, or at least they're saying that. Let's see what happens, you know, after today. But I think everybody's got too much invested that's still in the game, especially the first, you know, the top 3. Trump, for all intents and purposes, looks like he's going to run away with this tonight. The question is going to become who's going to be in second.
Yeah. What do you think about the
well, let me question your premise. Let me question your premise. Because your premise suggested if one of them dropped out, then they could consolidate the vote,
coalesce
the anti-Trump vote.
Actually, right? The premise is that everyone drop out. In other words, Cruz or Rubio, one of those two drop out. Kasich and Carson drop out as well.
Yeah.
Right.
But so you consolidate the anti-Trump forces in the party. And what we're seeing so far is much of that already going to Rubio. We've seen a spate of endorsements recently, most recently in Nevada today, Dean Heller, the senator, going for Rubio. But we've also seen people like Tim Pawlenty, the former governor of Minnesota, Bob Dole, the former senator, former presidential candidate. The establishment's all going to Rubio. But again, the premise is if those two, if they were to drop out or to join forces, they could beat Trump. But I'm just not convinced that a lot of those people...
One has to step aside.
Yeah,
the other one being...
Essentially, that means they're joining forces. But I still don't think that everybody would automatically go against Trump. I think some of those people would go to Trump.
Dana, your thoughts on whether either one would do it and or should do it?
I actually think that my opinion on that doesn't matter because they're not dropping out before next Tuesday. So, and the other thing that's interesting in this race is that, remember, there was so much gnashing of teeth about how much money was involved in politics, and especially on the Democratic side, so upset about the Citizens United a decision by the Supreme Court that allowed for super PACs and for corporations to be able to exercise their First Amendment right, because then they worried there's going to be so much money in politics. And what we found is that actually it doesn't matter if you're Hillary Clinton or Jeb Bush and you've got all the money. This is a very disruptive campaign, but there's new technologies. Donald Trump, a self-funding billionaire, doesn't have to spend hardly any money at all because he's figured out the social media piece of it. So I don't think that any of them are going to drop out because they don't need to, because they have enough money to keep going.
Can I throw one more thought? The March 15th date with both Ohio and Florida, winner-take-all states. Can you imagine, I mean, look, if you really want to make the run against Trump, if he beats the Ohio governor and the senator from Florida in their own states, I mean, they basically
That's
said
why they got to get aggressive. They just can't. If somebody's not dropping out, then somebody has to get aggressive and start addressing specifics. I just want to talk about what Trump said last night. I watched the Hannity event. What a bloodbath. It was amazing. I don't know how Donald Trump got out of that alive. I was watching it through my fingers. It was like, seriously, just scary. Actually, Sean did a great job. He's nice to every candidate, and he offers an hour to each one. Just so happens this is before the caucus. And Ronald Reagan, the point about Ronald Reagan, he was governor in 1967, 13 years before he became president. So he was a strong conservative for quite a while. We knew what that package was. He was Republican twice. And he had run for president before he ran for president in 1980. So this is a bit different. The other thing, too, is when you're talking about who is conservative and who isn't, it may not be important because ideology isn't important at this point. People are looking for strength over principles. However, one does have to point out that a conservative is not for bailouts, you know, bank bailouts or auto bailouts. It's not for eminent domain for parking lots. It's not for tariffs. It's not for trade wars or protectionism. It doesn't create straw men about mandates. If you're not for a mandate, you want people to die in the streets. A conservative might touch entitlements. Trump won't touch that. A conservative also is a champion of temperament. You are a conservative. You favor the known over the unknown. The good news about this whole thing is that Trump is not an ideologue. He is not a conservative. He's not a liberal. He's not anything. What he does like is he likes to be liked. And if he does become president and he looks at the polls and he changes his mind on certain things, that is going to make him more likable. He may not build that wall. The things that everybody's scared of may not happen because the secret to Trump is he likes being liked.
Okay, let's do this. Ted Cruz's opponents have accused him of dirty tricks this election, but he maintains he's not the one who's the bad guy.
It's a very strange dynamic where two of the candidates in this race, Donald Trump and Marco Rubio, whenever anyone points to their actual record, they won't defend their record. They won't even discuss their record. They just scream liar, liar, liar. And both of them have been engaging in very nasty, very personal attacks relentlessly and daily. And it's all false.
Okay, what do you say, Greg?
It's hard to take Cruz seriously because he has bear-hugged Trump for months. He did not go after Trump at all. He was Trump's close friend. So now when he's coming out and he's talking and he's trying to defend himself, it rings false, and it reminds one that Cruz has been an opportunist. In many cases in the Senate, he always looks for the most attention-seeking maneuver. You know, I think he's in trouble.
But let me also point out, Dana, that he's a great constitutional conservative. He argued in front of the Supreme Court on behalf of the state of Texas for 5 years, very successfully as well.
Extremely. And so I think, again, if we go back to remember that there were 17 candidates just a few months ago. Now we only have 5. But there was, out of those 17, there were several very qualified people, and I put Ted Cruz in that camp. I think one of the things for him is that, as I heard Mara Eliason last night on Special Report say he was being pinched from both sides because both Trump and Rubio were hitting him for the same issue, and so then he had to fire his communications director, and that became a news story and kind of got them off their game for a little bit.
And he, when he represented the United States, Texas and 31 states in the Heller decision, the Second Amendment defense.
Right, but I don't know that makes him such an attractive candidate. The problem is, look, he's saying Trump is not a conservative. We heard earlier Trump say, I am a common sense conservative. But you hear from Cruz, hey, you know what? Remember abortion. Trump has been back and forth. They say, you know, you talked about eminent domain, Greg. Trump, is that really a conservative position? So I think Cruz sees his hope right now with the evangelicals, maybe in like tonight in the rural parts of Nevada. But I don't see him coming through here. He's got to convince some people who are now behind Trump that really Trump is a fake. Trump is nothing but a blind trust, that you're putting your trust into Trump and his anger and his willingness to say anything. But is he a Republican? Is he a conservative?
Don't trust Trump. Trust
Guess
Ted.
what? That's not going to even work. Trust Ted. I mean, a good sign, but that's not going to even work. The people that are supporting Trump is because they want somebody who's like a doer, who's going to get in there, is not afraid to get their hands dirty and, like, you know, kick butt, right? That's what they want. It's like that attitude and willingness to get after stuff and do it. And they're obviously caring less about specific conservative, like line item, issues.
Yeah. Can I bring up a line item issue right now that's been the dividing line between Cruz and Rubio straight through? They've been going at it on immigration throughout the election. Last night, both firmed up their platforms on the O'Reilly factor.
Yes, we should deport them. We should build a wall. We should triple the Border Patrol. And federal law requires that anyone here illegally that's apprehended should be deported. That's what ICE exists for. We have law enforcement that looks for people who are violating the laws, that apprehends them and deports them. Both Donald Trump and Marco Rubio would allow those 12 million people to become U.S. citizens.
The ones that are dangerous criminals, the ones that are violent, the ones who pose a threat would be immediately deported, and many others will have to leave or be deported because they don't qualify. They've been here long enough. But I can just tell you that what we do with the rest of them is not even something we're going to have a debate about until we first secure our border.
So, Denny, you want to take this one? This is a rough one to dismantle.
I feel like immigration is, everybody's a little bit all over the map. They want a little bit of everything, and they're trying to be all things to all people. But remember in that South Carolina vote just on Saturday, 3 days ago, in the exit poll, 54% of people polled in South Carolina, Republicans, said that they were for a path to citizenship for people who were here illegally. To me, that means that this whole debate that the cable news and the newspapers focus on, and these two fight amongst each other all the time on this, that they're kind of missing the boat, that a comprehensive approach is a good one. I also saw Ace of Spades today make a very good point. If you say you are going to deport, it doesn't necessarily mean physically picking somebody up by the scruff of their neck and throwing them on a bus and getting them out of here, even though that is some imagery that people might like to use. The threat of deportation, or the worry that you might be deported, or a decline in welfare benefits for people who are here illegally will discourage people from coming here in the first place. So there is a school of thought that I think Ted Cruz didn't quite hit the mark last night, but that is, I think, the direction he was headed.
But I think, Dana, the key here to understand is that Ted Cruz is trying to appeal to that hardcore conservative base that he feels is somewhat distracted by Donald Trump. It's not only that he lost the evangelical vote to Trump, but that he's splitting people who say, I am self-identified as a true conservative. So he's trying to make the case, but I think he does it in impractical terms. I don't think, to people like you, the rest of us, I suspect people think, we're really going to round up 12 million people and throw them out? Is that practical? Can we really do that? He says, oh, yeah, we can do it. We have law enforcement that will do it. I just think that most folks who, when they look at that, don't believe it.
Well, that's what I said, though. The majority, 54% of people in South Carolina, Republican voters, said they weren't for that.
Right.
The way Sanders is pulling Hillary to the left on progressive politics and the politics of inequality, Trump has pulled the field to the anti-immigration point. But the irony of it is Trump might end up being, when he calls himself a sensitive conservative, less fiery about this than you actually think.
Can I, KG, last final thought, but the conservative movement is concerned with Rubio at one point being part of the Gang of Eight, which provided a pathway to citizenship, and now he's saying he doesn't want it. But look, I'm in the camp that says, where are you now? What do you promise to do when you're president rather than what you talked about 4 or 5 years ago?
Well, meaning go on the record, tell us exactly what you stand for so we can sit there and have columns and click down and say, okay, this is what their position is on immigration or on taxes or on the IRS or any of these host of issues, national security, the military. It's important because now this is getting really fine-tuned. So, yes, I'm interested in what you have to say today and what commitment you're willing to make.
All right, we're going to leave it right there.